Hi. Hi.
Hi Mitch, how are
Hello,
you?
how's it going?
Good. Thanks for agreeing to join us today. We're going to wait a couple minutes and then I'll introduce you and
Yeah, no worries.
we'll get started. This is very conversational, introduce you and we'll just
Yeah,
have a
that's great.
conversation about
No, this is awesome. The thing that I was mentioning earlier, it was literally all I could see was just a reflection of myself, and I had to talk for an hour, and I was like, that's really hard to do
it
with
is.
with nobody giving feedback. So I've just found, on the ones that I've done before with some webinars with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with June Kinishida,
Mhm.
but the ones that I've done with her, we've had a lot of feedback and kind of interaction and stuff, and I like to answer what you guys want to hear instead of me just sitting there talking for an hour on whatever I think is appropriate. So I think it's best when there is questions, and I'm all for it, and we'll tackle what we can.
Okay. I know that you are familiar with Kate and Kristen, you work with them,
Yep.
so she's about to jump on. So these meetings are recorded.
Cool.
Kind of varies on how many parents we actually have here, but we'll record them and publish them, and then they usually get about 100 views or so. And then if there's other questions, people will come back to me, and then I'll just reach out to you, so
That's
any
awesome.
questions that I
Yeah, no,
can't
that's
answer
great.
myself.
I've had some pretty good, connections with people through that where they said they listened to something, some recording, and I'm not sure whether it was on like a YouTube or Facebook or something like that, but it's great, and the reason we do this, I shared this with Bill too. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bill, but that's who I met in Portland. And the reason I got kind of involved with all of FSHD training and stuff and kind of researching and learning about it, really, that was kind of a brand new thing for me. So,
How do I get my thing
but
off there?
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I've heard your name around the community
cool,
for several years now, so
right on.
it's just taken me this long, unfortunately, to reach out to you and get you booked. But
It's
thank you so
okay.
much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mitch, and like always, this is a conversation. Chime right in with questions you have. He's all things PT and fitness training. Mitch is a fitness trainer from Portland, Oregon. As I mentioned before, he's very well known in the FSHD community for his understanding of FSHD and also for the results that he has been able to achieve with some of his clients. Mitch focuses on functional training and on the mind-body connection. He wants his clients to understand the why behind the what and to understand which muscles should be working when we're doing certain things. And his number one goal is to help his clients with quality of life. And that's what we all want, and certainly what we all want for our children. So welcome, Mitch. Thank you so much. This
Lot of
is
people
a
now.
parents group. They're parents here from all over the United States and with different age children's and different kind of spectrum of the disease severity is kind of all over. I know that you have several clients with FSHD. I'm sure you kind of understand the progression of the disease and how things can be very variable amongst different clients. So welcome
Thank
um,
you.
to our meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I think you said it pretty well there with, that people, the variety of, differences that we can see from person to person can be, very big. And, I find that with anybody and everybody. So we're all very different. So that's why we need to kind of find the exercises that are appropriate for the individual to do, and that's on different levels of whether they have the ability of doing it or whether it's entertaining for them too. So, we can't have exercise be a chore all the time. It's going to be sometimes, but Caitlin is sitting here. She's one of the eight people. So you can ask her, we have to have fun with it. Okay. It's not going to be fun every time. I can tell you that right now. It is work, but you've got to have some exercise approaches, whether it be, more stretching or more of a walking or a sprinting or a jogging or a crawling or whatever it is that, kind of grabs your attention. That's something that we really need to find. And that's more of the individual person, and then of course the abilities, that's something that we have to adjust to as well. But I've never met anybody that has zero abilities to work on something. So, even, I had this conversation. I know he's okay with me saying this. Even just today, Bill said something to me today. He said, there are certain days, which I see him 3 days a week, and I have for about 8 or 9 years now. And he said, 60% of our time together is exercise, but 40% of it is just mental clarity. And it's talking about life, it's talking about what we can do to focus on the things that we can focus on, and not get stuck, dwelling on the things that are out of our reach or, the undoable. So everything is there if you want it to be. You just got to be somewhat creative, and then yes, you have to give effort. I think I've had this conversation with Kate too, where I said, it's hard to work out, but it's also hard to not work out because you'll lose abilities of doing certain things, and then of course with FSHD, it might be a little bit more important for you to focus on it as soon as you can. And that's just what the situation is. So being realistic on it, and knowing that we need to jump on it and focus on it and probably for the rest of our lives. But I also had this conversation with everybody. That is why I have a job. These people pay me to pretty much keep them accountable. Keep them accountable, and then of course, have fun with it, like I was saying in the beginning. So it is a mixture, but we've got to get the work done, and it does pay off. It does pay off for sure. Kate, what would you say in the sense of like, are there certain things that we always start with? What do we do at the very beginning of our sessions? Do we just start like right away, just really getting intense, or do we kind of catch up? Like, do I say hi to you and ask you how your day was and stuff like that?
Always say what's up, and then I always say the sky, the temperatures, or gas prices. And then you always say, no, I said, what's up with you? And then you say, oh, but the ceiling's up. And then yada, yada.
Okay.
So it sounds like she listens a little bit more than I even thought she did. So that's fantastic. But I think that's kind of what she's saying is we don't just jump right into it. It doesn't have to be like that all the time. I think it's very important for people to wake up and not have stress be the first thing on their calendar. And life is full of stress. So whether it be your job or your kids or your duties that you have to do for that day, save yourself a little bit of time, wake up and do some warm-ups, for yourself. So I call them WD-40. And it's a lot of what my clients kind of have for their own WD-40 lists. And there's multiple lists because I think some days you don't really want to do anything too crazy, but some days we should probably push the buttons a little bit. But Kate, what would you say what is one exercise that comes to mind that we've pretty much done almost every single session?
Dead bugs.
Dead bugs? Perfect. Let's talk about that. Why do we do dead bugs?
Cause muscles, yay.
Yeah, muscles are working. Muscles are working. So can you kind of explain a dead bug though a little bit before people are getting really confused what we're talking about?
You lie on your back and you stick your legs up and then you put them down and the other one down and the other down.
Now, while you're doing all that stuff, what is the main thing I usually tell you to focus on?
Hey, go slower, Kate. Straighten your back out, Kate.
Okay, so let's go on that second part. Straighten what out? The back out. Okay, so I'm not trying to quiz you right now, girl. I'm just making you think. Now, with the back, it's a really good example that she said right there because one of the things that we see with FSHD specifically is lower abdominal weakness. So lower abdominal weakness is something that we, want to introduce to the body, or I guess the other way, strengthening the lower abdominals instead of, making that be a little bit more, prevalent there. If she's on her back and she lifts up her legs, her lower legs and her upper arms, or all four of her limbs, naturally just gravity itself will force the pelvis backwards down towards the ground and the spine to be flat. So we are somewhat just playing with the sense of, using the ground as a tool. And then it's something that this is when I ask her what's up and she says the sky and all that stuff, we're usually already started. She just doesn't really know it. So now going back to what we talked about at the very beginning, yes, of course we catch up. Yes, we don't get right into it, but we do. She just doesn't really realize it. Now, Kate, you're learning some of my secrets, so I need you to erase some of that action, right before I see you next time. But there are
no promises that will not happen.
No promises. Okay. So, you've got to get to work. You don't want to spend 5 hours a day. We'll find excuses. You don't even really want to spend multiple hours a day. And we don't need to either. But consistency goes a long ways. And our body wants to be introduced to those positions and postures and breathing. And how many times do I ask you if you're breathing? How many times we looking for our abs to engage just by breathing?
You say, "Are you breathing?" And I say, "Yes, that is a fundamental part of life."
Yes, she likes to be a little bit sarcastic back to me, but she usually, I know
In
what she
case you
means, so it's all
haven't
good.
noticed yet.
It's our way of communicating, and it's okay. So doesn't bother me, but that is exactly what you need to find though too. And a parent is great, a spouse is fantastic. I would say just by watching and intermixing with Kristen and Kate, she does better with me. So she loves her mom, I know that, but sometimes having, since we're kind of talking more so about parents and their kids, having somebody else be kind of the mediator or the complete person is probably going to be beneficial because they build a separate relationship in that zone that's outside of mom making me do this, mom making me say this, mom saying push harder. It's I have two kids now, and there's a lot of power that we have, and there's a lot of times that we feel like we have zero power. So sometimes I think getting somebody else involved in the situation is really, really key. Now, is it going to need to be a physical therapist? I wouldn't necessarily say that. I am not a licensed physical therapist. I probably could have continued my education there, but I just found my way into different alleys. I did go to college and I did a lot of studying on things, but I ended up finding certifications and finding certain, specialist things that I wanted to focus on. And then I found my way into this. So a physical therapist, I would not necessarily say you have to have, that headline. You can find somebody, even like just a trainer at a local gym, but it doesn't mean that I don't have some of the knowledge that a physical therapist does. And so you've just got to dig deep into this. And when Bill came to me, he told the person that was my manager, said, I need somebody that is willing to do the research because I almost can guarantee you he doesn't know anything about it. And I didn't. So we did it together, and he is a very bright guy, so that helped a lot. But we had to do some of that research and we had to kind of figure it out. But to expect that you're going to go and find somebody, at the local spot or even a high-end spot, I wouldn't necessarily stress that. If you have the resources for that, by all means. But I don't think if you don't have those resources, don't count it out that you can't have somebody helping you. A friend, even. I've actually trained Kate probably 25 times now, I'd say, with a friend. And it's fantastic because, once again, one, she's having more fun. I think she enjoys my time, but I think it's even more fun when Annalise is there. So
Yell at us when we're laughing at each other, and you go, "Stop doing that."
I don't say that. Come on, you're making me sound mean. I don't say that, but
Well,
yes.
at the end of every time, you go, "Okay, I'm gonna stop being mean to you now."
I do say that. You're right. That's it's my line of telling people that they've got one more thing left. So it's just, I don't know where it came from. It's what I created. But no, when we do it with her friends, though, it really is. She's more interactive with them, so she's having fun while doing it. I usually I make them kind of interlock their feet together, so usually they complain about that one. But let's talk about that a little bit, Kate. What are we doing when we do that one, and why is that a good exercise? What would you say?
Muscles,
Which
yay.
muscles?
Absolutely. Can you explain a little bit though? Like where are you? What, are you on your back? Are we in a leg press? Do we have to have the $5,000 machine?
On the floor, because the
Mhm.
floor is the best place in the world.
It's a good tool.
Answer the question. Why are you on your back?
Because I'm doing exercises.
But what are you pushing against? And what
The
muscles?
feet.
And what muscles is it activating?
More legs.
There you go.
Stuff. Yay.
So we use the ground again as a little bit of a cheat. And so, her focus there, and I usually tell her that, I said, your focus is not to create as much power as you can. Your focus is to create your posture to be in the position that we need to, and then create as much power as you can. So you've got to have a little bit of, the priorities in line there. And if you're losing the position, you're just reinforcing strength in the wrong position. And that simple-minded, kind of thought and approach has taken me and a lot of my clients well beyond FSHD a long ways. And I've been in gyms my whole life. And, when I was younger, it was definitely a little bit of a different approach. And then it changes and, things that you like, things that you don't like. But the number one thing that I think I have definitely changed in the last decade is just more so about functionality and thinking more so about how the body will work instead of how it looks or how it's supposed to maybe look compared to the person next to me or the person that I saw on TV or the person that this. We are all very, very, very individual. So we need to find those things. Now, the lower abdominal weakness and then the leg presses are all kind of combined with the same idea. She's using her leg press and pushing back and forth, which when I should explain this a little bit more. When Annalise is there, her friend, they go foot to foot. So it's just the equal resistance back and forth. Now, when I do this with people that I have locally, of course, where I can have hands on, it's my hand. Okay, so I am the leg press, and I make it a little bit more, a mental kind of aspect there, where they really need to focus on, keeping the knee tracking. So if I'm on the other side of them, where I can kind of see the ankle, the knee, and the hip, I don't want the knee going outside and inside. Now, if they can't do that, whoever the person is, if they can't do that, I have another hand, so I can track that, so I can give a little bit of assistance. Now, a little bit of assisted movement, I think, is a big headline of what I wrote down of what I wanted to talk about today, because that is something that Bill and I had to make sure that we weren't giving him almost too much assistance where he wasn't getting anything out of it, and kind of trying to figure out, is this good? Are we even like doing anything, or am I just doing this? Now, the range of motion that I can bring Bill into because of some of the spots that he just can't get to is fantastic. Okay, and we use a dowel. It's like a closet hanger, like for clothes, and we use a dowel. He holds on to it. The very first thing we do right away is we just bring him all the way overhead with his arms, get some spine decompression, get the scapula to go up high. Bill, I believe at around 25, he was asked to fuse the scapula. So I know certain people, and I've had that situation on a couple of webinars that has happened, and you're not going to be able to do that afterwards. So I'm not sure if that is as common anymore. I'm not sure if that procedure is done as often as it was 40 years ago. But I do know there are some people that have that. So that would be out of the topic there. But Bill cannot go all the way overhead. He can get much higher than when we first met, but he cannot get all the way overhead and sustain that. So I just do it. Okay. And then we'll do ranges of motion of pressing the dowel. He'll bring it down to his chest. He'll bring it overhead. Now, when I say he can't do it, he can do it with very, very, very little bit of my effort. And I don't mean just because I'm stronger than him. I mean that it's just like a tiny little bit of lift, and it opens up that ability for his muscles, his body to do it. And he does, I would say, 98% of it. I do 2%. So it's not a 50-50, 70-30, anything like that. He is doing most of it, but without me, he couldn't do probably more than 65% of it. So that little assisted extra, kind of range of motion where I'll be bringing him through gives him the ability of really kind of making that length with his bones, his muscles, his connective tissue, and his body itself. So go ahead.
When you exercise with Kate or Bill or someone else with FSH, how many upper body exercises do you do and how many lower body? Is it a mix, or do you kind of have something in your mind like I want to do X amount for the upper body and X amount for the lower limbs?
Totally. I mean, it's, in general, I would say it depends a little bit. With Bill and I, just to kind of use him as an example, his upper body was much, much more affected than his lower body. He does have some situation with, drop foot kind of at the toe. So he's created a little brace that he actually made. People have asked me a lot about that. So if you've ever seen our social media, the tag name is at FSH Fitness. I've posted probably 12 videos, something like that. I wish I was much better at doing it. But with my 2 kids and all that stuff, I say I'm going to do it every time, and then all of a sudden it's like every other month. But I like to put some material on there, and there's some really good stuff that it kind of shows Bill and I doing this. But Bill's upper body was much more of our focus. So we definitely did that for a long time, kind of like drinking water, stuff like that, just tensile strength in the hands, the ability of getting overhead. So not necessarily. We focused a lot on the upper body, and then after a while, then we had some things with the lower body. Then he had some knee pains. We focused on that. So it really is just listen to your body. Your body will tell you what it needs, what it wants. Okay. Now let's just go into kind of like a simple answer there. And I would say in general, yeah, you want mixed. If we're doing 7 days, let's go 6. So we don't have, you can take one day off. I'll give you that. Go 6 days on. I would just go almost like 3 and 3. But I don't like just doing all legs or quads or whatever people, kind of break them up in the gym. I like kind of addressing my whole body almost every time I go exercise. And so I kind of do that with my clients too. And then I ask them, well, how does that feel? Oh, there's something kind of funky in the shoulder. Well, let's address that a little bit. Let's work on some thoracic rotation. It's our rib cage pretty much. It's a part of our vertebrae of our spine. That area needs a ton of rotation. And so this is with anybody and everybody. If we have shoulder pain or back pain, I usually look at their thoracic mobility. So that's just, kind of giving a simple answer there in the sense of listen to your body. Listen to your body. And if it says you have a shoulder issue, you probably do. If you feel like you were, weak in the arms, you probably are. So it's time to focus up on those things. So it's really hard to give a specific answer because it really does. It depends. Bill's situation, we went more on the legs. With people, or excuse me, upper body. If somebody's having a really hard time and their focus is standing, which I do have another lady that I'm working with FSHD, and that is one of her goals. All 5 exercises I gave her to work on, and she does not live in town, so it's a remote, training session. We're all leg stuff. So, but to say that I want you to work 100%, that or this or that there's just not that, it's not there. You really need to work for balance. And then I think the same thing too, we get bored of that. If we know we're just doing that, and it's nothing a little bit kind of different or change, it just, we don't have that mental drive to want to keep doing it, so, a mixed bag is just the best way to put it. Sorry for kind of a not direct answer there, but it really does. It depends, and everybody is so much different.
That's a good answer. Kristen, I know that Kate's been working with Wade for several years now. Where would you say like her biggest improvement has been? Or Kate, there you are. Where's your biggest improvement?
Yeah.
Your mom was like hogging the camera.
Yeah, she's half listening. She's doing homework and
Okay. Like, where do you feel like you've improved the most, Kate? Like your upper body, your flexibility,
this
your
movement.
strength. Like what do you think has gotten better since working with Mitch?
Pretty much everything, I guess. I think my abs have gotten stronger because I know when I took a big break from having him every week, I got significantly weaker. So I know that was helping a lot.
Nice.
I think that's an awesome answer.
And you go to a physical therapist and also to Mitch, correct, Kate?
Yep.
And what's the difference? I mean, what's the difference in the 2 sessions?
Be nice.
Well, if you had let me finish, you would have heard some very positive things. So you need to wait. So what I was going to say was, at PT, I do a lot of, I'm looking at the building right now, I'm getting really sorry. So I do a lot of stretching, and with him, I do a lot more workouts.
So
Like
after
strength
a
building, yeah.
session, when I ask her, between PT and Mitch, where does she feel like she's worked harder? It's definitely with Mitch. And then we did have a significant break this summer. And she did not request to go back to PT. She wanted to go back to Mitch, and with the quote saying, "The future Kate's going to hate the current Kate, but I think I need Mitch again."
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, I think that's perfect. And I'm going to use this moment a little bit to respond to a question here where it said, how old and how young are you working with? And all ages, really. Kate is the youngest person with FSHD that I've worked with. And we started working together, I think, when she was 9. So it's been about 4 years. So it's a good, when you ask her in the sense of like, what have you progressed in most? We have changed a lot of our focuses within 4 years. So a little bit like, when you asked about, and I gave you that very long extended answer of what to do and how much to do. We've changed a lot. We've changed a lot of different things. And I think her mental ability of wanting to work out has probably changed the most. But I don't think that would change as much if we didn't prompt it as much as we did. So with FSHD, that's the realistic aspects that we got to focus on. We need to move. We need to move, and it might be more important for her than her friends. But you know what? That's just what it is. And she now knows it. She knows that she can talk to me about it if we need to. So that's also where I said, build the relationship with somebody outside of the house is always really important, because we have built that relationship where I think if she had some concerns, she knows I would listen. So those parts are extremely important. And when I kind of have to yell at her a little bit, she listens. And so she definitely picks it up. And if I say, hey, I really want to focus for at least, 20 more minutes here, let's really get some of these things in, she does. And the quality of her movement, which probably also goes along with her strength, but I think it's the mental and physical aspects that she's just more, she's maturing into. But like I said, if we were just getting started right now, I don't think she'd be as open to that and trying to put that into her, lifestyle, which at 13, there's not that many 13-year-olds in gyms. You might see them for a month or two, or, they're cranking out a whole bunch of sit-ups because they saw something that they needed to do. But 13-year-olds are not the common age in a gym. So if we can promote that, that is one thing that I would say is probably the biggest thing that I've seen change for her, which is awesome.
And Mitch, how hard is it to do these exercises and make sure that your clients are doing things in the correct way and using the correct techniques and stuff via Zoom? When you do it like that, how does that work?
It is tough. I've Zoom mostly became, just like with most of us, COVID obviously kind of forced us to have to do it. So I'm not sure. I don't know how it would have gone if we weren't forced to do it for multiple months, because it was just, this is what we were going to do because we didn't have another option. But what I do, and just this is a great way for, if another PT listens to this too, and you guys don't live in the same state and you met and whatever, I send videos of me doing it. So, I don't pick 20 exercises because there's just so much information. If we pick 20, we'll do 3. So I usually like 4 or 5, and we usually do like they do 4 or 5, and they focus on it for, everyone's a little bit different. Some people I see weekly, but I would say on average, at least 3 or 4 weeks, they work on those 5 exercises for 3 or 4 weeks. If I don't see improvement, I really do got to question them whether they're doing it or not, and that's okay. And I'm very straightforward with people, and it's I think that's definitely a tougher part of my job, but I had to realize that after a couple of years, because if you're not straightforward, they stop taking your word for, strong value. So you've got to be straightforward with them. You got to tell them what needs to happen, and doing it needs to happen. So,
but I think one thing to note on FSHD is that you're not looking for a monumental improvement, and it could just be more of just a range than an actual physical increase. Because a lot of things we've done with Kate has been a range that she's been able to do a broader range on certain movements versus actually lifting weights.
100%. Yeah. And that was something that Bill and I actually found today too. We did some bicep curls at the very end of the session, and we both looked at each other and just smiled, and we didn't really need to say anything else. And we don't do it that often, but we just kind of threw it in there real quick. And he goes, wow, that's just crazy. Because one of his goals was to be able to ride a trike. So he had to have, stability in the elbows, the triceps and the biceps pretty much. And that wasn't present. So he hasn't tried to ride a trike because that was about 9 years ago, and I'm not sure if that's a goal of his anymore, but that came up today so we have those moments all the time, and I see him, more than I see my friends. So I should say he is my friend, but I see him more than I see other people. We see each other a lot. We build a really strong relationship, and we know each other well. And it's very, very fun watching progressions like this. And I think the bigger part is it doesn't take crazy heavy lifting like Kristen just said. It's much more mind-body connection, really understanding, when we're pushing, we're trying to get our chest to work. We don't want to see a whole bunch of shrug. You want your scapula to be rounding. So, I definitely talk a lot on Zoom because people need me to, I just kind of almost paint the picture for them to think about. And I find people exercise better when they understand the picture, and what it's supposed to look like. So it's very fun watching things like that, progress. It's definitely more of I would say our biggest focus is more maintaining what we have and keeping what we have rather than really focusing on getting more. I've definitely seen more in Bill, and he's 61 years old, and I've seen more in Kate, and she's 13 now, but she was 9. So it's been all over the board. I've never seen anybody get worse with our movements. But I would tell you some of the movements are sometimes rather simple. It's just more mind-body connection and getting in certain positions, even just a lunge position, which if Kate can still hear that, she's definitely going to be running away. It's a tough position for her. It's a tough position. But just being in the lunge position and then focusing on where her pelvis is and what her lower abdominals are doing and what her diaphragm is doing, which is pretty much how we breathe. So there's a lot of that aspect that I implement into her that I want her to take with her for the rest of her life. So it's, getting up, and you don't have to go to a gym necessarily, and even if we're in wheelchair, which I have multiple clients that I've worked with that are in wheelchair only, it's still extremely important because as soon as, when you kind of said there, how do you make sure that they're doing it correctly? Well, it is tough, so of course I can watch and I do know what I'm looking for, but I record, and then sometimes I ask them to record and send it back to me if they want to. If they don't want to, that's fine. But, it does take effort, but I will see it. So as an example there, one of the things that I saw is she was doing a pull, and then I saw the lower spine go forward when she pulled backwards. And so then I commented on that, and she said, "Oh yeah, I've been told that before." So there's just little things there where I'm not really that worried about how strong her pull was. I want her to pull and distract her posture. That's pretty much what the objective is there. So there's always something that we're working, whether we're standing, crawling, and sitting in a wheelchair or whatever it is. So we always have muscles that are present.
So would you recommend that people have some sort of routine that they do 6 out of 7 days? And as young as you could get started, like, as long as they can understand direction, like 5, 6 years old, and do it most days of the week, is that what you would recommend?
100%. 100%. Now, let me elaborate on that a little bit more, though, just because I think some people are going to think like, man, that's like drill sergeant. Now, I've got 2 boys, and they're 3 and just about to be 2. So it's right in the zone where they're going to start to want to do exercise, kind of. They're not going to want to go do squats, and they're not going to want to walk on a treadmill. That's not what I'm talking about. But one thing that I saw, and I've always wanted to do this ever since I saw it, was a mentor of mine makes his kids wake up in the morning and do certain activities. Now, his was grabbing bean bags and throwing them through hula hoops that hung from the ceiling. So the whole point was that they need to get their critical thinking, their cognitive thinking skills, their coordination more present. Then they had to touch their toes on one foot 10 times. Then they had to do the other side. So that's more of what I mean by exercising. It's not just, I need you to do 10 push-ups, I need you to do 10 crunches, I need you to do 10 clamshells, which Kate and I do clamshells. They're good. I'm not trying to undermine clamshells, but Kate doesn't want to do 10 clamshells every single morning. Neither do I. So we've got to find little things like that that are just a little bit more entertaining, grab our attention, and still get the body and the blood flowing. And that's the bottom line. We can break up, I could really break down a toe touch or somebody throwing a beanbag through a hula hoop, and I could tell you all sorts of things of what's happening, in an anatomy sense of it. But it's just, movement. So yes, I would say 6 or 7 days out of the week, we want to move, or, yoga, if you like yoga, whatever it is. But yes, move it. And then certain days, we have to push into uncomfortable zones to create change. That's just the bottom line. So we can't just toe touch every day, but I do think it's very important to do those types of things. And I even had this conversation with my wife's grandmother. She has, I guess more so grandfather. Grandma has dementia, And so I said, well, why not warm up kind of like the way, preschoolers will, where they go in and they get squares and shapes and they put it in certain things and it reminds the brain that this is where that goes and this is where that goes and this is what I do with this. And my hands are for this and my feet are for this and my body's for this. It's like, why not? Just because we're adults? So I say this a lot when I'm training people, we need to play like kids again. We need to be more active of just whatever it is. I mean, when I'm with Kate and her friends, they're just constantly moving. And that's pretty much what I've told Kate is like, I want 40 minutes of movement. I want you to be moving for the 40 minutes you're with me the whole time. We can talk, but you're going to be moving pretty much the whole time. And what is it? Well, we bounce back and forth. If she really doesn't want to do it, I'm not going to force her. But I'll remember that next time and bring it back up and she'll remember it too. And then it's a little bit easier next time. So, psychological games are all real when it comes to training and forcing ourselves to do things, whether it's not eating sugar or it is going to the gym and working out. We have to set ourselves up for success there. But I think having different approaches and different lists that you can do is a great way to do that. If it's all one list, you'll find a reason to not do it after a few days.
So I think for parents, one of the things that have been helpful for us and why we've had such a long relationship with Mitch is getting Kate. I don't know if you all try and work with your kids to try and get them to work out and do something, and it just turns into a complete fight. And she won't listen, she won't do it. And so when Mitch asks her to do a clamshell, she does it. When I ask her to do it, she's like, oh God, I'll give you 2. And then we get in a massive fight because I have no patience. And so this has been super helpful. And then at the end, he gives her homework. And so that homework is just 2 movements every night before we go to bed. And she has to check them off and she has to give the report back to him. And so it's not me telling her, it's her homework that's coming from her teacher. And to her, she's so studious to her that he picked up on what motivates her and how he can get her to do things. And he knows that that's who she is. So that's been incredibly helpful on our side where, when she doesn't have a PT session, I double down with Mitch just so that her body moves twice a week. And then that also the reinforcement of us being able to do those little movements together at the end where we're focusing on her abs or we're focusing, that month we could be the abs, the next month we're doing grip. It's just wherever we're focusing, it helps to have that third party in that my husband and I can rely on and say, well, you're the one that has to tell Mitch you're not doing it. And then it's like, fine, I'll do it.
Awesome. I had a client today, she's 87, and she was telling me a story about her daughter. And she said, well, you're going to be able to tell Mitch this. So, it sounds like of all different ages there, they talk about it outside the gym. And that is the relationship that I like to build with my people. Because it's like I said at the beginning, you've got to have, it can't be a chore. It can't be a chore. If it is, it's just, your energy won't be there. So then, in a bigger point, it's like, okay, well, now I'm wasting my time and I'm wasting money of theirs. And, so you've got to make it to the point that it is entertaining. It changes a bit. It's fun, and then you hold them accountable because that's half of, what we're doing there is, making sure that we do get there and we do get our things done and we do have, approaches. When people have pain or people have concerns, they get more concerned when they have zero idea of what to do. If we have a little bit of an idea of what to do and how to approach our difficulties, we feel better about it. You go to the doctor says you're not sick. You're like, oh man, I do feel a little bit better. And it's a real thing. And so when we have plans ahead of us, we can look at them, know what to do, tackle them, and then we can move on from there and either advance or change it up or whatever it is. But having the list there is definitely a great way of keeping anybody accountable despite the age, which is awesome. So let's see. So a couple of things that I definitely wanted to talk about too was just the more specific spots that we find, with FSHD. I know we talked about lower abdominal weakness. That's really, really, common. The dead bugs is a really, really common exercise that Kate and I do. Just to reiterate on that real quick, you're on your back, your limbs are up. And that can pretty much be it. Okay, if that's the ability that you have, that's totally fine. Do your limbs have to be up? They don't. So be creative there. But what we're trying to find is that the rib cage and pelvis are facing each other, pretty much laying flat on the ground. Okay, if you have the abilities to progress there, you can drop one arm down to the ground, or you can drop one leg down to the ground, or you can do both. And you have to continue to have that rib cage and pelvis facing one another, and your core should be working. So your lower abdominals definitely kick in there. Kate and I, she likes the dead bug drops, but we call them dead bug tilts a little bit more, where she's still in her dead bug position, but instead of dropping the leg out in front, we tilt left and right. And then that turns on more of our, what I call the side abs. So our obliques, and our abs, our core. But our core is not just our abs. It is far from that. So when we're keeping our rib cage and pelvis together, that's more of all the muscles that comprise to be the core. And when we roll left or right or drop forward and backwards, it just challenges that position. So that's a really good one to do. One thing that my client and I do in person is we use a dowel, and I bring him up in sit-ups, and then he goes down slow. And we've done that with Kate before too, I believe, with her dad. And it works great.
We still do this.
Perfect. Yeah. I've actually had some really, really good progressions with Bill on that one. But we do it every time. And he knows when I grab the dowel and he's on his back, I just hand it to him and we, go right through it. So you don't need that $5,000 machine, like I said earlier, on the leg press. You don't need that crazy gym membership. If it will get you to the gym, by all means. And if you need that resource to get out of your house, it's probably a good idea. It's definitely, usually a little bit more beneficial to leave your space, but whatever is more comfortable for you. You've got to create some easy ways of moving the body from where you're at. So the dowel is a great spot. Ankles.
One other thing to touch on. I got a question about that you work virtually. And so I think before you wrap up, if you can talk a little bit about that, because we were skeptical in the beginning 4 years ago, but it's been a positive experience that we've continued for 4 years. And I know other families have as well with you.
Oh yeah, totally. It's, we were all kind of wondering whether it was going to work even with my clients locally, but, even my clients locally, they like it because it's just, they're at their house when they start and they're at their house when they finish. So, there's definitely some benefits to it. I know where Kristen lives, there's a lot more traffic than in Portland. So traffic times and drive times can always be, definitely saved there. But when it comes to virtual training and actual, the benefits of it, it's the exact same thing. It just puts more responsibility on the client, because I'm not necessarily there. So I need them to be more connected with the session. I ask a lot of questions. How did that feel? Where did you feel it? What do you like? Where is this foot at when that foot's there? So a lot of talking and communicating. But if you have the willingness to do that, the virtual sessions have actually been, I would say, awesome for most people. And I would say a lot of my clients, even locally, like I said, have almost changed to Zoom or do one Zoom, maybe one in person. But if that is at all your concern of whether or not, a virtual session, whether it be with me or somebody else, is, a problem, it really should not be. It's more of just a willingness to do it. The other part, though, is I do think, with my FSHD groups, I have said that I want someone to be there, though, because that extra range of motion or tracking, and I don't need it every single time at all, but sometimes it's really, really nice to be able to get into some different exercises, being like that leg press or, pushing the knee out and in, against somebody's resistance and force. There's a lot of things that we can do with somebody's light assistance. So with any concern of a virtual session, I would say it's 100% beneficial, especially if you have somebody more teaching you instead of just kind of forcing it and making you go through the work. Because that's more of what I like to do, is teach the people so that they can implement it to their daily lives, like what Kristen and Caitlin do, of a couple things at night, and then adults, I think we understand that we need to do it. So Kate's only 13 and she was only 9 when we met, and she's been doing this for 4 years and she's awesome. So as she continues to build that just understanding and correlation to the why behind the what of what we're doing, she's just going to do it more and more. And I see that even just with like my other clients here too, that have kids in the background. They're always kind of interested, they're interested in what mom or dad is doing. So it just kind of puts their brain in a little bit more of a, oh, maybe I should do that too, and it helps. It really, really does. So for the longevity of, us needing to know that health and fitness and moving should be included into our almost daily routines, a good start is watching your role models, your parents, up above doing the same thing. So I would say absolutely virtual sessions are fantastic. It's been no problem for anybody that I've done it with. It's just a little bit more of, puts the responsibility into your hands of doing it. So I do want to go back there real quick of ankles. Ankles is definitely a big one. The front side of the shin bone is definitely a weak spot that we can find with FSHD too. And so allowing for just like ankle circles or ankle pumps is what I call them, pushing the foot back and forth here. And then if they can't do it, again, for the dorsiflexion is what it's called. It's bringing the toes to the shin. That is a position that I have found to be very difficult for anybody I've worked with in person with FSHD. So I will do the motion pretty much completely, and then when I do that, I will touch the muscle that should be working, and it helps. It works. It starts to palpate. You palpate the muscle, and it starts to fire and contract more than it did beforehand. And Bill and I have had a lot of success with either the shin bone muscle, it's called the anterior tibialis, or biceps, pecs, even rows, trying to figure out certain spots when you're doing rows of not just overusing the deltoid, the shoulder, but trying to find more of our trunk muscles on our sides. So that technique has been a really, really big one for us, of just using palpation to kind of connect the mind and the body as to, you feel this, you feel me touching it, now use it as you do the motion. And that has definitely been a really big approach. And so those were definitely two things that I wanted to make sure I talked about. There was assisted workout. So having somebody bring you through stretching or strengthening of assisted range of motion. And then also kind of that brain neuromuscular connection of touching the muscles, the palpation, while going through the actual range of motion and the exercise, so that your brain can kind of feel it, connect it more. And we've had success of it having more contraction after that, which is awesome. So those are two things for sure. And then scapula. Scapula is another huge one. We talked about it a little bit earlier with some of the overhead abilities, and then possibly fusing scapula. Like I said, I'm not sure if that's still as common as it was 40 years ago, but the scapula, we have had significant strengths around the scapula area for Bill, which is fantastic. So what we do, again, you'll see it on the FSH fitness page on Instagram. I think it's probably, I'd say it's maybe the 6th or 7th video from the bottom. It is Bill sitting in a chair, and we have a dowel vertical, and we're just pulling and pushing back and forth. I am his resistance. So if he's pushing forward, I'm pushing the opposite way. So he's using his chest, and I'm doing the opposite, but it's more focused on him, of course. And then when we get out, then I switch it and I pull, and he pulls in. So it's just a pull and push for him. And then, like I said, we talk a lot about posture, breathing, where he's at in space, and then of course you can do something called eccentric, which is working in the muscle in a different form. So when Bill pushes out, he then tries to pull. I'm sorry, let's see. Let's go with the bicep. It's an easier way to explain. This is what we did earlier. I had his hand at his shoulders, and then I slowly was pulling it down with a band, and he's slowly going like this. So when people think the bicep, they think about pulling the hand to the shoulder, but we're doing it, and that's called concentric. We're doing it eccentric, and we've actually had really good success with that too, to get the muscles to fire differently. And the eccentric version is just the lengthening aspect of the muscle while still under load. So that has been a really big one for us with biceps, lats, and rhomboids in the backside, and making sure that those ones work, not just the deltoids, the shoulders. So those are three things that I definitely wanted to make sure I got in before we were wrapped up today, of little kind of just tricks within the trade of what Bill and I have had some extreme success, and Kate too. even though I'm not in person with her, I do a lot of the similar kind of approaches there of really trying to make sure that she knows where we're at, knows what she's trying to feel, has the control. It's not about how many repetitions. It's not about how many, how much of this or how much of that. If you focus on your body on a daily basis and you move for, I would say, at least 30, 35 minutes, your body will have benefit from it. And then you'll crave more. When you feel benefit and you feel the endorphin release, your body craves more, just like it does with anything else that this world has to offer us.
Mitch,
So,
is there anything you recommend for considering if you're doing 6 days a week for recovery?
absolutely. And so, of course, diet and protein and nutrients and all that good stuff. But there has been some research in the sense of if you go too hard, it can almost progress the the disease, make things worse. We have not found that. I don't think research is really showing that as much anymore. But when it comes to recovery, creatine is another thing that has been tossed around for muscle recovery. But you need to listen to the body. And I actually, a lot of this stuff actually happened today with Bill, conversation wise, so I can kind of use it again today. We have been working on getting up from the ground. So we're doing a new technique and a new kind of tactic, and it is hard. It's a lot of work for him. So we did all 3 days last week. And then I think he kind of got excited because we found a new technique that I think he worked on it. And I told him to, so, it's my fault. But he worked on it. He said, my legs I'm tired. And so it was a moment of, and this is kind of when that 60-40 of, the exercise and then 40% mental clarity came in, where I just said, Bill, regardless, man, I said, every one of us, every single day we are getting older and we can't recover as fast. I said, so you just need to listen to your body. If your body needs more recovery, you need to recover. Does that mean we do nothing? No, I would say that does not mean we do nothing. That means that maybe we lay on our back and do some single leg raises, or allow for somebody to do some light stretching for you. Try to create blood flow, because blood flow is what's going to release some of those toxins that are built up, whether it be lactic acid from exercise or, just kind of that dense feeling in the muscles. You want blood flow. So I rarely find it that I would say to somebody rest unless they are sick or they just had a big injury happen. And those are the times. Other times, there's something out there that would benefit, and even just like, if you just lay on your back and reach your arms overhead and just lay there and just focus on the breathing, breathe your back ribs into the ground. Do that for 5 minutes. And I would say that's going to be better than not doing anything just because we were sore. So easy answer, listen to your body. If it says it's sore and it's tired, it needs longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, look at protein. Protein is a really, really big, factor there for muscle synthesis and muscle recovery. So making sure you're getting that. And then water, sleep, kind of the simple answers on the side. But I would say just the listening to your body with the fatigue. And then if you've asked or tried, creatine, I do know some people have tried creatine and had some success with it, but I have not. So I don't have that feedback for you.
So you would say these exercises you went over, like if someone was on a deserted island for a year and they didn't have access to you for a year, these are the exercises that they should do on a daily basis: the ankle, the core, the shoulder, the biceps in different ways. I think that's what I got, like the core, the leg presses, the biceps, the ankles, and the shoulder. Would those be like the big ones for FSH if they didn't have access to anything else? And they can go to @FSH Fitness on Instagram and sort of see an example, a video of all these exercises. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's I wouldn't say necessarily like verbatim. You're not going to see them in line, but yeah, there's abs. I've as I've gotten a little bit better with Instagram, but like I said, I'm not very good at it, so it's not too common. But like once a month you'll see it, and it'll say like abs, it'll say leg press on one of them. So I got a little bit better at kind of labeling them type deal, but it is pretty simple. But the ones that I kind of like specifically talked about with that is just more so things that we'll see more affected with FSHD specifically. But what we really can't forget about is our hips. Our hips are very, very strong. So our hips are, and even if you are in a wheelchair, I still think it's very, very important because it's still core strength. Even if you can't necessarily stand your feet and extend your knees, you still put force with your hip or your butt cheek into the wheelchair to make a turn. So it is still very important. And, our glutes, we you can't forget about them. So standing tall or doing leg presses from the wheelchair. So there's, man, I think there's about 615 muscles, 206 bones, something like that. So we have a lot to do, which is also a good thing because I talk so much about changing it up and making it fun and making it versatile and, doing different things and different demands. So yes, the scapula area, the lower abdominal area, the ankles are big things that I definitely focus on with my FSHD group. But I would say those are three spots that I focus on with everybody because they're mobile areas. Our shoulder wants to be mobile, our ankle wants to be mobile. If they're not, they can put it into the neck or the low back or the knee, so yes, but don't forget about the rest. So unfortunately, there's just so much. So using that FSH fitness for ideas, and know what the body is supposed to do in space. And then there's so many ideas out there with exercises. And it doesn't matter whether or not the person is demonstrating for FSHD or not. You think about the fundamentals of what your body needs to be doing in that exercise, because they might just be demonstrating it for energy and kind of show it's flashy. Is it the best exercise in the world? I think anything is a good exercise if it's done correctly.
Right, and I just wanted you to mention real quick, and we're almost out of time, just the importance of movement after you get in a wheelchair when you have very limited mobility so you don't get contractures. Because once your joint is contracted, it's really, really hard to get it loosened up. Like,
Absolutely.
you want to be proactive there so that it doesn't get contracted because it's almost impossible to release it without surgery.
Yep, no, 100%. And that's where body work can be, extremely important. And, I have, especially with some of my elderly community, people wise though, I think he's about 85. I lay him on his back and I pretty much just do passive range of motion for him everywhere. And then of course we will do some leg presses, but it's that same thing. If you're in a wheelchair and you're able to get to a bed or maybe a stretching table, massage table, something like that, allow for somebody to do that for you. And even if it's like once a week would go a long ways. But if you sit in the same position for too long, and that's whether it's standing or sitting or even our sleeping, people always ask me what's the best sleeping position, and I say mix it up, because your body doesn't really want to be in one position for too long. It gets stiff, and it's kind of like in a car. You get out of your car just for a couple of hours, and it's that normal stretch that everybody does, stretching their legs, stretching their arms, whatever we have the ability, whatever feels tight, move. So at least once a week, have somebody just do some body work for you. And then, of course, if you can assist with the motion or go against resistance, then add that in. If you can't, just allow them to do it. Move the ankles, move the knee, bend the knee, straighten the knee, move the hips left and right, up and down, push it back and forth. There's a lot of ways to create some simple little approaches. You just got to have a plan. You got to find somebody to give a little bit of assistance. Find somebody else like myself. There's plenty of me out there that have some ideas of what to do. And then ask about, if you have questions about the posture, where am I supposed to be when I'm doing this? Those are the things that you have to find out on your own so that you can really establish that answer. I could tell you, but you got to do it to really establish that learning and really getting it down for yourself. And that's where I find my clients to have the most success, is when they actually learn the process, not just make me do it.
So can I ask you this favor for those with young children? Maybe get some ideas on how they can sort of play in the morning or play before they go to bed that would help them to kind of get ahead of these problems that we know that's coming, like these core areas that they know is probably going to be problematic in the future, and they're
Absolutely.
just playing and having fun and stretching. Because I can't, my son is 19 and I wish I would have started this, 15 years ago when he was first diagnosed. They're like, oh, don't exercise, you're going to hurt him.
Right.
That philosophy has all changed, but I feel like I'm kind of behind the curve on a lot of this stuff. So I just want to emphasize to the parents, if you have young children, do it now while their muscles are stronger before they get weak. So then you can prolong that strength, you know,
I
and
got an idea on
also
that.
the flexibility. And the flexibility is huge. And you think it's not because your child is young and they're flexible right now. But as their mobility gets more limited, I promise you their flexibility, they will have some problems in some of these areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. And getting them familiar with, the motions and familiar with just even moving the body in general, is going to be a great start. If it's not very pretty, it's okay. It's all good. I mean, I did that with my son actually, who just turned 3, and I set up I set up an agility ladder, and he came out, and he didn't do it right at all, but of course I pumped him up and told him he did. But it was just, he pretty much just danced through it and jumped through it, and what we talked about was practice landing. So that was our objective, was just to practice landing. I didn't try to confuse him and tell him he's not doing it, right. He wasn't doing it right, but he was having so much fun. So that's what I took out of it. Did he really get all that much better at the speed ladder or the agility ladder? Is he that much more agile? No, but he wants to do it again. And that's what we need. That is what we need. And I would say that is another huge part of my job, is that people, when they come home from, vacation, I like that they're like, hey, I'm back. Are you ready to work out again? That means that I am doing my part to make it, at least a little bit entertaining. Their bodies feel good, and we want more. We all want more when we see progress of something.
Right. And if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to maybe hire you for their kids, how do they do that? I've already mentioned that at FSH Fitness at Instagram, you've given us a lot of exercises and explained them that we can start doing with our kids at home, and maybe talk to our physical therapist or whoever we have working with our kids. But if someone wants to reach out to you rather than go through you, I can do that too. I can facilitate that. Or if you want to give them a contact that they can reach out specifically to you if they want to hire you for your services.
Absolutely. I mean, if you are familiar with Instagram, that's definitely going to be an easy way to, create communication there. But if not, of course, cell phones and emails and stuff like that is just fine. I don't have a website. They were kind of asking me that a little bit before we started this too. I just really haven't, once I left a big gym, I haven't had necessarily a need for advertisement. So I don't have a website, but I think I've talked about it a long time, where I would love to have an FSH library, website where people can approach it, and maybe have a small membership type thing where they can get little exercises and explain things and stuff like that. And that would obviously be a really easy way to communicate, but that's not quite there. I do hope that happens in the future. An email would be awesome. My email is mwade, MWADE, fit, FIT @gmail.com. And that'll work just fine. And then, of course, the @FSH Fitness for the Instagram is one where you can communicate with messaging on that. And then, of course, you have the resources for the videos. And then Ali had asked me about maybe posting something about the kids. So I think that's a great idea. So I'll get my little guy out there and demonstrate some things and just kind of make him go through a couple of things. So you'll see that obviously it's not super smooth. It's okay. Just guide them. So that's what we're teaching, and it's relatively simple because they don't have that much strength, but it's just, the normal motions, and trying to teach them how to pull, how to create grip strength. And then if they can stand, put them in funky positions and make them pull again, because what's going to keep them in place from not falling is balance, core muscles, and coordination. So if we can
Mitch,
develop those things, go ahead.
I just want to clarify your FSH Fitness, because there's 3 FSH Fitnesses on Instagram. There's FSH.fitness, FSH_fitness, and FSH Fitness, one word.
I'm going to be the FSH Fitness, one word.
Okay.
And it should be a picture of me and Bill. Are you able to see that on there?
I see I see two people. I'm looking at my
Yep.
phone.
Yep. So yeah, no worries. That's probably
Hey,
it.
I've
That's gonna
seen you
be.
working with Bill. I've seen your videos working with Bill before.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So there's 22 posts on here. So, we're getting a little bit better, but like I said, life has just been quite busy for me too the last couple of years. So it's not an excuse. I will make it happen. But, I think another point to that though too is by all means ask what you want to see. I don't mind that at all. It's this is really just, sharing information because Bill kind of gave me that interest. Bill's very involved with the FSHD Society, and I know more things over on the East Coast as that's where he's from. But, he was very excited to share what we have done with him. He wants to share that information. He's more than happy to talk to anybody. I can promise you that. So if there is a willing and a wanting to do this, I'm willing to help. He's willing to help, and we don't have to live in the same states. I think just a little bit of some explanation goes a long ways. And I've had some really good success so far with working with people all over the world, which is crazy, but mostly in the nation. But it's been very, very fun. And like I said, if there's a will, there's a way.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, so I don't know how much longer we can keep going.
Yeah.
I
Are there
do
any other
have
questions
more.
before? Yeah, we've reached our hour. We want to respect your time, but if there's any burning questions, you can always early onset chapter at fshtsdsociety.org, send them to me or send them directly to Mitch. Mitch, we appreciate your time. I know that you've had a lot of success with patients with FSHD, and we appreciate you giving all of this advice to our community, and it's very helpful. Kristen, please thank Kate for coming on here and
She had to run
suffering
off.
through us.
All right on. Well, it was a pleasure. It's always very fun. It's why I do my job is to teach this. There's plenty of jobs out there, but I chose this because I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching it. I enjoy seeing progressions, and I enjoy seeing people say, "Wow, I didn't think I could do that." So,
That's great. That's a great way to end.
It's amazing, and if you want to do it for yourself, there's a way to do it. You just got to put the effort out there.
All right, thank you so much. Get those kids
Absolutely.
moving. I can't emphasize that enough.
That
Move them
sounds
while they're
good.
young.
I'll get the
All right, thank you
video.
so
I'll
much.
get the
You have a
video
great
on there
night. We
pretty
appreciate
soon.
you very much.
You as well. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.